there, welcome to Open for Business CEO Style. This is the podcast where we fling open the doors to the world of business, doing it the CEO way. That means we're here for the women who hustle, the dreamers who build, and the leaders who are ready to rewrite the rulebook. I'm your host, Toby Ferrel, and I'm the owner and CEO of Toby Ferrel I Associates, and I'm here to be your guide, cheerleader, and your business bestie. So grab your coffee, your laptop, or your favorite pair of power sneakers, because in this corner of the internet, we're getting open for business CEO style. Hello, and welcome to Open for Business CEO Style. I'm Toby Ferrel, your certified entrepreneur and business coach. From startup to scaled success, I help women entrepreneurs grow businesses they love. Joining me today is my dear friend and mentor, Alexia Martin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Toby.
Welcome. Morning. How are you this fine day?
I am good. Getting ready for a fine day of selling insurance and keeping everybody's assets protected.
Ooh, I love it. Keeping people's assets protected. Love it. All right. Well, let's get started. So let me introduce you to my friend here. Alexia Martin is the owner of Whitco Insurance and serves all of Florida with offices in Punta Gorda and Nokomis. If you don't know where that is, Southwest Florida. Here we are. She's been called the hardest working insurance agent since she doesn't always work 9 to 5. I think I might have called her that, but I know a lot of people call her that. And you may see her answer your email at 5 in the morning, 9 at night, on weekends. You just never know. You just never know. You know why? Because she's the hardest working insurance agent that working for you. An interesting fun fact about Alexia is that she has worked heavy equipment with her dad. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for everybody out there, my father has had a business for over 45 years. And doing heavy equipment, land clearing and whatnot. So I have actually driven behind a dump truck. I have actually been a part, and yes, there's a picture of me in front of a dump truck about getting in to take off, and a skid steer. I actually operate a skid steer and got the dirt down in and was able to put it into the back of a dump truck, which was not easy, I want you to know. But you know what? It's rewarding what they do to make us and our roads better, and also just land clearing and the whole bit. So I've done loaders and dozers and excavators. So yes, I've had some fun with it.
That is awesome. That is so cool. Well, shout out to your dad as well. This is amazing. Thank you for sharing your photos.
You're welcome. Thank you for showing. So we don't all have to be a man to be able to.
No, definitely not. No, definitely not. Definitely not. All right. So we're going to do some questions and answers. We're going to talk about business insurance. So it's always been a fun topic of mine. So let's just get started, right? All right. So Miss Alexia, can you explain the different types of business insurance policies available?
Yeah, so there is quite a few business insurance policies available, and a lot of people know about the general liability and they know about their property insurance. But I think what a lot of people are not aware of is there's different facets to the property insurance. It's not just your business contents, but it also could be spoilage. It could be spoilage of Botox if you're working in a day spa or salon. It could also be a veterinarian's office or a medical office for spoilage. A restaurant is typically what comes to mind. There's cyber liability insurance. There's inland marine coverage. What inland marine coverage is all of your equipment that you're taking around in your vans or your trucks, anything that you're moving around to different locations. So it could be your heavy equipment like a laser at a day spa and you're moving it.
Oh, wow.
There's cyber liability. There's workers' compensation. There is excess and umbrella commercial policies as well. So, and the list goes on and on and on. There are so many different policies that you can purchase. And that's why it's important to have a really good agent. So they're telling you about all the different policies to make sure that all of your assets are protected. And the biggest one that really we're starting to see is employee liability
Oh, wow.
insurance. And that is covering the employer for any type of employees filing lawsuits, or if you do interview process and you don't hire somebody.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yes. The topic of insurance just swirls my mind. So,
Does everybody.
so which is why I have you as my agent.
Oh,
But that's for another show. That's the girls' night out show, right?
yeah.
So, how does one determine the right amount of coverage for their business?
That's an excellent question, Toby, because that is something that we often either get asked or never gets asked
Hmm.
because they don't understand it, so they don't know what to ask. So determining the right insurance is you need to look at all of your assets. You need to look, what are you trying to protect? If you're trying to protect property, I mean, obviously you're owning a building, or you've worked really, really hard on that business to build it up, and you don't want to be taken away from you for not having enough coverage. So a lot of times, everybody thinks that the general liability coverage at 1 million, 2 million is a good limit, but you may have to have an additional coverage depending on what your sales are. So if you are in, let's say you are a restaurant or a general contractor. If you are a restaurant that's producing $2 million in gross sales, or 3 million or $4 million in gross sales, then you need to look, and you're serving alcohol, liquor, then you need to look at not just carrying a 1 million, 2 million policy, but you need to take a look at possibly excess liability up and above that. So we can sell as much coverage of liability as you need.
Right.
You can go up to 5 million. I've seen 5 million, 10 million. If you're a condo association, you can also look at 1 million, 2 million. You can go up to 5, because if you have different risk exposures, those exposures being a dock, a swimming pool,
Right.
multiple buildings. It's just, we need to sit down and have a really good evaluation of all of your risk exposures, so we can make sure that we have a clear picture of what we recommend at that point.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, that's excellent information. Excellent information. Thank you. So I know this may seem rapid fire, but that's what we are on questions. We're trying to get all the information jam-packed into the session so that our listeners can make sure they are properly insured. So can you explain the difference between general liability insurance and professional liability insurance?
Yes. So often the general liability is always going to cover your bodily injury and your property damage. There's 5 parts to a general liability policy, and that's typically the bodily injury is what people think of, the slips and falls, the operations of the business. But what about contractual obligations as well? So we're going to protect you contractually. We're also going to cover you for any type of advertising injury. And what about those businesses out there that may put on Facebook that they have had an issue with them, and they go out there and put stuff out that's not true, or may be true, but you can't back it up, and they sue you. So anything on advertisement, or if you steal someone else's advertisement, or you've borrowed some pieces to that advertisement without their permission, we're going to cover you under that general liability policy. The professional liability is more along that licensing. If you have a license, if you're an attorney, if you're an insurance agent, even your home watch companies needs to have professional liability. We always think, and the property managers need to have the professional liability. The salons have to have professional liability. So there's a lot, but that's really for your expertise, something that you have been licensed for your expertise. You're going to need to look at, or a business consultant, it needs that professional liability. So they work completely different than they do for that general liability.
Okay, very good. That is good to know. I've always wondered about that. So what is property insurance then? And as a business owner, a lot of people lease their locations possibly. So what is property insurance, and what kinds of business property can be covered?
Yeah. So business property is the contents inside, but let's say you're renting, because you had stated renting. So if I'm renting a location, I'm going to want my contents covered. So whatever you turn upside down falls out, that's going to be your contents. But what about if you had to do the build out? and you came in, it was an empty shell, and you had to put up walls and you had to redo the flooring. Any type of build outs that you're going to be doing, you're going to want what's called betterments and improvements, because you bettered the place and you improved the place. So if there was a fire, you're going to want to be paid back for your betterments and improvements for that particular location. And you would also want to not only have that, but all of your equipment, like we talked about inland marine. So if you have any tools, if you're a contractor, tool coverage, anything like equipment that is moving around. Just the same thing for a delivery company that they actually call cargo. So you're going to want that cargo covered as well. So once it leaves the facility of your client's house and it's in that car, commercial auto does not cover anything that is damaged while it's in transit. So we're going to want to make sure to cover that, just like on your repair shops. Your repair shops needs garage keepers coverage, because that is, if the car is left overnight, there's vandalism or something happens, then the insurance company is going to subrogate against you because it was left in your care, custody, and control. So as you can see, there is a lot to property insurance.
There is a lot to property insurance. So if you owned a moving company and you're moving people's possessions, prized possessions, to their new location, and something should happen, property insurance is what's going to protect you, against the damages that those people's.
Yeah, so the cargo, so it's called cargo.
Cargo, okay. Even though it's not your cargo, it's someone else's cargo, that protects that.
Yep. So yeah, anytime that you're hiring a furniture mover, you want to make sure they have cargo coverage to cover your belongings.
Right. Okay, let's talk about a hot topic here. Business interruption insurance. So in my mind, listen, we live in Southwest Florida. We live in Hurricane Alley. 2 years ago, we were hit by Hurricane Ian, which pretty decimated the entire coastline and 3 miles in of everybody's home, business, car, you name it. I mean, it was a full decimation. And it's just now coming back to resilience, right? How does that take effect? How do hurricanes take effect in business interruption, or even COVID? I mean, listen, we were shut down for almost a year, right? What does that look like is that what business interruption insurance does? Tell us.
Yep. So I want to tag back off to COVID for the business interruption piece. So as most businesses did have business interruption coverage, unfortunately, because it was from a bacteria or virus, insurance companies in the state of Florida would not pay out on that type of policy, period. And the reason being is because sometimes we have to look at how laws are signed in. And that is something that was signed back in by our state government back in, I think, in the 90s. Where they were basically protected the insurance companies and the businesses for that piece. So there was no coverage for that. And it's kind of hard to really pinpoint on a virus. However, fast forwarding to Hurricane Ian, I had a lot of losses in claims in regards to business interruptions. It works two sides. So let's say you're in the business, and let's say I had a law office. The building was completely destroyed, and it was condemned. They could not stay there. They had to find a temporary location because they weren't aware that they would be able to move back. So business income typically goes in, it's going to pay for, after 72 hours is typically waiting period. That's your waiting period. They're going to then start paying you out, and you have to have your bookkeeping. So we have to have proof that what you've done, and at least in the average of the last 3 months, what was your income coming in and your expenses. So we're going to need to know that in order to be able to figure out what that is. And business income extra expense is a time element, and it's kind of a difficult thing. I always say, just make sure that you have your bookkeeping up to date.
Very important.
But it's going to pay for that loss of income and your expenses, like the payroll. Why you're not able to be in your location, or you're trying to find a new location. And also, that's the business income side. You also have what's called extra expense. The extra expense is going to be the temporary cost to relocate you to a temporary location until you can go back into your permanent location when it's been renovated and repaired. So unless you can't, and it's going to pay you out, typically they can pay you out 6 months, 1 year. It just depends on the policy language and what you actually wrote as a
Okay.
policy.
Yeah.
But kind of flip siding it back is if you have a building, let's say that you own a building and you're leasing out your building to a tenant and it's destroyed, and now they had to move out while your building is being renovated, the business income side can also pay for the loss of rents while
Ah,
they're
okay.
gone until you can get another tenant back in there or get that same tenant back in there.
Pretty good. Well,
There's a
that's,
lot more to that,
oh,
Toby.
I'm sure we probably could do a
So
whole
I will
episode on that
not.
alone.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a good information on it. And
Yeah.
it's definitely a coverage that is not cheap anymore since COVID and since Hurricane Ian, but it's definitely a very necessary, or else most businesses do not have enough savings and money in the bank to be able to continue on their business, and they will
Right.
end up going out of business.
Right. Interesting. So with the light of the recent, what happened over the weekend, I guess, I know I'm going to make this name very badly. Cloudflare, crowdsource. I don't remember their name.
Yeah, the crowd service. Yeah.
Crowd service, right. So if they had business interruption insurance, does that take a, I mean, they're the one who caused it. I mean, unintentionally, of course, but, or does that cover, let's say, the airlines? Does that cover the people who are affected by that? Or is that more of a cyber liability insurance policy?
Unfortunately, that would be, well, it depends on what caused it. They're already saying, they say that it wasn't from a cyber situation. So it depends. When you buy cyber liability, you can buy a business interruption coverage for cyber downtime, just FYI.
Okay.
As far as with this, unfortunately, for business income and extra expense, you have to have, if it's for your location, it's typically assigned to a location. If you cannot operate the business out of your location, then you will have coverage through business interruption. But if you run it out of your home and there was no issues to it, like in COVID, they didn't have, and nobody was coming, nobody was being able to go out. So that you have to put money away for those kinds of situations.
No insurance policy is gonna cover your
yeah, exactly. And you bring a great point to remind everybody, insurance policies are just as good as what the language inside them are, and they are not the end all be all to everything. So sometimes we just have to be prudent and also have a good savings account for businesses.
Yes, and that's a good point, which we're going to get to in a little bit, about the differences of coverage, with, between the same policy type. Yeah. So then what is cyber liability? I mean, what could that do for us as business owners?
Yeah, so cyber liability is going to basically protect the data breaches that you have go on. If somebody, if you don't mean by malicious malware and attacks or spying on you, and you're giving up personal data on your clients, then you can be fined. And it's not just, oh yes, you had some cyber things. You can also be slapped by federal and state governments as well for fines and fees because you had a cyber breach. You'll also have to make sure that if it is determined, you have a huge reputation now for your business to have to overcome. You have forensics piece of it too. And then the downtime, if they steal your information, or if they're holding it hostage and by ransomware. So there's a lot of different parts to the cyber policy that is going to cover and give you protection. It's not just one or two pieces, but there's multiple things. And they're finding that the average cyber attack is now costing businesses on average anywhere between 500,000 and upwards. A lot of them now are getting in the millions of dollars. Wow. This is not, because it depends on your book, your clientele or your base. Right. So if you have a very large clientele, I mean, back in the day, emails were not a part of that. Now emails are a part of that. So if you have over 50 emails, and these are your home-based businesses as well, if you give one piece of identifiable information, then you have just now breached, and an email is identifiable information. Wow. So everybody essentially needs to have some type of cyber liability right now to protect them, because we work on our computers all day long.
Right. No matter what size, no matter if you have one customer, no customers, 3 customers, exactly, 1 million customers, it just doesn't matter the size the size or
No.
revenue of your business.
And identifiable information, like I said, is email, phone number. It doesn't have to be your social security number.
Right.
It doesn't have to, it could be your date of birth. It could be an address, a name. Any of that is tied to identifiable information.
Right. Wow. Wow. So how would cyber liability protect me if let's just say I used phone company A and all my, and it said that they had a breach and all of my text messages were sent to somebody now that I have phone numbers. I mean, I didn't cause that. The phone company that I have, my cell phone provider, caused that, right? Or
yeah,
happened to. Am I protected, or do I fall
no,
under
because
their
that
cyber
means,
liability, or I
yeah,
have to have my own?
the phone company would have to give you some protection. So they typically have to notify. This is the first thing that anytime you have a cyber situation, we have to be notified. Anybody that's ever done business with that particular business is going to have to be notified. And then you're going to have to be watching. I mean, I just recently got something that said that there was a breach out of one of the credit card companies, and that we have to now start to monitor. So they have a duty to let you know there was a breach. They're not going to pay you for anything yet, because they don't know what information and what's been breached yet.
Right. Okay.
So typically when you buy a cyber liability policy, when a business owner buys it, if they're protecting themselves, they have to first of all, it takes a lot of time and money and energy to go out there and notify all of your clientele that you've had a breach. And then you've got to hire people to be able to screen all those conversations that come back that there was a breach or questions. So now you got to hire more staff, and you have to do that. So what do you do in that situation? But just because you've been breached, there's nothing yet, no coverage for you yet. And then that would be underneath the phone company's cyber to pay you out and protect you.
Right. Oh my goodness. All right, let's hope and pray that never happens to us.
I
hope. Like identity theft, that's too much, right? And I'm just gonna hire people to do it. That's it. You're right. Just hire people to do it. Awesome. Moving on. So let's get into some industry specific situations here. Are there any specific insurance policies recommended for certain industries such as tech, healthcare, retail? I know that you touched upon this slightly at the very beginning of our conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, like tech, for instance, and if you are, let's say you're taking care of computers, you are out there because there's a lot of them. They're out there, they're servicing the computers of businesses and individuals. Then those particular individuals will need a general liability for entering into someone's home, for any damage that could be within their home. It's the same thing with your plumbers, your electricians. They all have that in case something happens. And they will also would need a professional liability. And depending on the actual cyber, they would need a cyber as well. So those are three things that would come to mind.
Right.
I mean, pretty much cyber needs to be for just about everybody.
Sure.
But then it also depends if they have some contents coverage. If they need some coverage for their inland marine while they're in their vehicle driving around with their tools. Tools of trade of computers and whatnot. So if they take your computer with them and they're telling you that they're going to take care of it for you and bring it back to you, then they would need an inland marine to protect those computers. And don't forget, I mean, this is talking about specific, but let's say a janitorial company. Janitorial company is going to need general liability and a bond for employee theft. Right. Because of something that could arise and happen. So we do also take care of surety bonds, performance bonds, bid bonds, those things too. I mean, the insurance industry has a lot of policies that we can write. You can see where you can go off really, really quickly if you don't have a really good insurance agent, that it's not just here, let me call you up to get a general liability quote, because it may not just be a general liability quote. You may need to have more coverage than that.
Right. Right. And I think one thing that I've noticed, again, I'm not a licensed agent, but I know in reviewing policies for clients that I do, not all liability policies are not all liabilities are written the same, right? So they may have different exclusions that if you don't read the 300 pages that come with it, but who's going to read that? Your agent will know. I mean, and that's really the true, I think, in my opinion, the true value that an agent can give you is, do they really know, the difference between company A, company B, and company C's quotes for the same type of policy? Because one may cover this, one may not, one may do all of it. You just don't know unless you're going to read it yourself, which I highly doubt.
Yeah, and I will tell you, Toby, you mentioned, and you really touched on a very good point when you're talking about, so general liability policies, for instance, if you have your operations, you could have a policy that is only for premises specific, meaning they're only covering for work that's done at that premises or within those premises. You need to make sure that if you're working all over the state of Florida or in different counties, because we have different people in different counties, they need to make sure that that policy is covering them all over the state of Florida and not just premises specific.
Wow. Yep.
That's a big one we see a lot, actually.
Yeah. Good information. So with that same theme, how can a business owner ensure they have the coverage that aligns with their industry's unique risks and what their business actually does?
Yeah. Yet again, it goes back to having a thorough conversation. We get it all the time where business will call us and say, we need a quote for general liability. Okay, so we start asking more questions and they're like, why do you need all these questions? Why do you need all this? It's because it gets us to what is it that you're really doing? Because we need to make sure that we're covering you correctly on that general liability. And really having that conversation. What are your risk exposures? What are you doing? One of the key things, and I want to just touch base very quickly on, is workers' compensation. So often I hear, well, I don't have any employees. I subcontract out all of my stuff. Oh,
That's
fabulous. You are fully responsible for your subcontractors that you hire. And when I tell people that, they're like, no, you don't understand. They're subcontractors. They're 1099s. They have to carry their own workers' comp or deal with themselves. I'm not responsible for them. You are, because you hired a uninsured subcontractor. And that is something you're fully responsible for, unless you either get a workers' comp exemption certificate for that one individual, if they can, or you get a workers' comp proof of insurance that they have workers' comp covering them. Now, if you get a work comp exemption for them, but they hire employees or 1099s, then you're responsible for their 1099s they hire, unless you also get exemptions from all of them as well. So you are not safe when it comes to a 1099 unless you know that they've got workers' comp. And I've seen where claims have happened, and it's very expensive claims have happened, and it's tied back down to that other business. So a hair salon, for instance, hires a lot of 1099s. They're
Right.
booth renters. If something happens, they get hurt on the job. That's not general liability. That's workers' compensation.
Wow. That is very excellent. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was on my mind about workers' comp and because a lot of entrepreneurs self-exempt because they don't have the employees. They're not going to spend thousands of dollars on a workers' comp policy when it's just themselves. They just don't, right? So they self-exempt. And that's important to know. Wow.
Or they'll say they have employees, only 2 employees, and the state mandates 4 employees, and it's part-time or full-time, but you're still responsible for those employees. And if it's just 1, 2, or 3, you as the business owner are still fully responsible for all of their medical injuries while on the job, but also the lost wages.
So how does a business owner who has less than 4 employees cover their people out through workman's comp?
Yep, through workers' comp. You call up and you get a quote, and we need payroll. So we actually need the payroll of the employees. If the owner wants to be covered, then there is a set dollar limit that the employees are rated at. And then we just do it based off of class codes. What is their job descriptions within that particular business?
Got it. Very cool. Oh, thank God the world has you, is all I have to say.
Insurance superpower.
That's it. That's
the superhero.
Insurance superwoman. So with business insurance, right, and being industry specific, I'm going to take it a little on the side here. So I see a lot of time, I coach clients, business owners, entrepreneurs, that they wear many hats vocationally, right? So they start a business over here doing vocation A. Then they're like, oh, I'm also going to do this over here. And neither have anything to do with each other. They run it under the same LLC or the same sole proprietorship or however they're going to run that. and they think that their insurance that they have over here with the original company is going to cover them over here. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's another good one because that happens all the time.
Yes.
So in that situation, normally for us as agents, they would need to let us know what they're doing, because if I'm covering just a entity and they decide to do something else as well, they don't let me know, then we're only going to be covering for that one, and whatever they do for this other piece of it is not covered.
Not covered.
So a good example would be the handyman.
Yes.
Okay, that has decided now they are going to do home watch, and they're doing two ones under the same LLC or corporation. The thing is that whatever I'm quoting first, I'm not covering the other one unless they call me. If they call me, then I have to see if that first company that currently insured with will allow the other class code. If not, then we have to write two separate general liability policies under the same entity to be able to cover those two risk exposures, if the company's not going to allow us to make sure we can add both class codes on.
Right. Good to know. They have
Some companies have no problem adding class codes. They just have to see what it is that you're doing and what is their exposure to for claims.
Right. Good to know. Right. Communication is always key in anything you do, right?
Absolutely. Communication, absolutely. You're right.
If I was a mind reader, I'd be on my own tropical island that I owned.
Oh, yes. If I only had a magic ball.
Exactly. With a direct line to you, of course. All right, moving on. So claims, the claim process. What is the process for filing a business insurance claim?
Yeah, so typically when we get the claim calls in, I mean, I've taken so many different claims. I've taken claims from fire, complete fire losses. I've taken claims for Hurricane Ian, obviously for hurricanes. I've taken claims for the slips and falls. I can't tell you the amount of situations that I've had recently. Normally when you call up, you're going to make sure to tell us what was the date that the claim happened. And we'll have people say, I don't know what date that was. That's okay. Just pick a date, because we can't file a loss without a loss date. So we need a date. We need to know everything that happened. And I will tell you that if you can't get to us very quickly, because it happens on a Saturday or Sunday, then you need to write down everything that happened. What happened. Normally us as agents, I actually have a loss claims form that I'll give out to all of my commercial clients, all my business clients, that they can save on their files, on their computers, and or in their file, that it's called an incident report. And it basically says who, when, where, what. Right. And then they can email it to us or whatnot. So but the biggest thing is just making sure you have lots of great documentation of what happened during that claim. And workers' comp claims, if you're a business with a workers' comp claim, you file it immediately. If the agent's office isn't open, then you call the claims number that's in the work comp packet and file it right away. You can be fined by work comp for not filing a work comp claim fast enough.
Wow. That's good information. Very good information. How can business owners keep their insurance costs manageable without sacrificing necessary coverage?
It goes back to having a annual meeting with your insurance agent. And it just because there's certain things that maybe you were covered for at one point, and maybe you have now no longer have certain employees, your payroll has changed. Maybe you're not doing certain classifications codes anymore. So we can know what to take off. And that happens often. People pay for policies, either they need more coverage or need to be rated differently, or they need to peel back some pieces because they're not doing certain items. So really having an annual review by your insurance agent. We in our office can either do it by phone, by Zoom, as we are today, and or in person. So whatever is most beneficial with your schedule, it is really critical to have that, because sometimes a lot of misunderstandings in insurance happens because you think you know and you may not know, or things change, and things change all the time.
Right. That is true. An annual review is just so important. What factors can affect the cost of a business insurance premium for a business owner?
Yeah, years of experience is one. How many years have you had with no claims? because a lot of these companies, they will give you some credits built in. So they actually will give you credits because you've been either had insurance for a length of time, anything over 3 years that you've had experience and had a policy will give you those credits. Anything under 3 years, it becomes an eligibility for certain companies. But that definitely is probably one of the biggest driving forces. Also, if you have a burglar or fire alarm and you're a business, that can give you some credits as well. So if you have a new roof, I'm talking about the property coverages,
Right.
those can give you some different kinds of credits as well built in.
Interesting. Okay. Does personal credit play a role in that at all?
It does on commercial auto.
Okay.
Just like on your personal auto and your personal home, commercial is on commercial auto, it does build in. So it takes it based off of the scoring model for the owner who's applying. Now, there are some companies that does it based on the social security number of that particular owner of the business. And then some of them, if you're one of the owners, some of those particular commercial auto policies doesn't take it off of credit, which is nice.
Okay.
So getting with a very knowledgeable agent to find out which company does what is most critical.
Sure. No, that's important.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay.
That's a really good question though, Toby. I don't know. You're on your
Sometimes I think really well. Oh my goodness.
I think you're in the insurance business secretly.
I know. I probably should. We've talked about that many times, but yeah, me and tests.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm impressed. I have my real estate license and my commercial association management license. You know, I'm impressed I got those done. But
you are a jack of all trades. You've got so much experience and knowledge that you really are very empowering.
Thank you. Thank you. I work hard at that. I really do work hard at that. Because the more I can learn about other things, the better I can help, you know, friends, clients, relatives, whoever. That's my passion, is helping others, right?
You know what? Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. That's it. So we're getting to the end here of my list of questions that I have here, and time is running short. So I'm just gonna take a second here and just kind of see what really would be effective for our listeners. So I guess one of the questions here is how can businesses stay compliant with insurance regulations and avoid potential legal issues?
Yeah, and that's yet again going back to that review. It just ties to that review, making sure that you have the workers' comp, you have the posters for your workers' comp, making sure that you have the employee liability practices so you don't get caught up into lawsuit situations. Make sure your general liability is rated correctly and that you have the best. But it really goes back to doing that annual review, and it's critical. And we have for years and years have gotten so busy. Business owners are so busy, but we don't realize that your business is your biggest asset. And that if you don't protect your business with insurance that's going to protect it, you could see yourself in court or not having enough coverage to protect you at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very, very, very important. Very important. So, what are some strategies for minimizing business risks to potentially lower insurance premiums?
Yeah, the biggest thing I think is not having the claims. I have a current client who does a lot of drilling. They do a lot of dredging and drilling for the lines for Comcast, and they've had a lot of claims. And it's not necessarily for them, it's their subcontractors. Mm-hmm. And I think the risk management piece is really important, because if you have too many claims, you can either be dropped and canceled by the insurance carrier and try to find a new policy is going to end up being very expensive, or leave you in a situation where you have to go to the state to try to find a policy, and they charge 3 and 4 times the rate. Right. The same thing with workers' comp is making sure that you are doing the safety protocols. You have a safety manual, you have drug-free credits, and you're doing, drug-free testing. Over the years for work comp, marijuana has become, medical marijuana has become a big question and hot topic because it's legally not, acceptable. But yet medical marijuana in many states is allowed. So that has become a very big issue, a very big topic, is how to handle those types of claims and those types of employees that are having a medical marijuana card and having to work on the job. And if they do have a situation where it causes medical injuries to them, how do we factor that in?
Wow.
So those are things that are still being talked about by the insurance
Yeah.
companies, especially, and I bring that up because that's becoming even more and more, if you're having somebody that's on ladders, you have to have safety. And the biggest thing I think is in your work office, your day-to-day office. Carpal tunnel is a big thing. So what do you do for carpal tunnel? Making sure that you have a really good mouse. The keyboard is a
Ergonomic
good
or yeah.
keyboard. It's yeah, exactly. It's economic. And it's also what facets of that, because we don't think about that when we're running a business. We're just like, here's your computer, here's your mouse, here's your keyboard. But
Right.
maybe we need
Right.
to have that conversation about how to answer the phone
Sure.
and not be like this.
Right.
That's a
Right.
risk management piece.
Right. Or even offering stand-up workspaces or
Exactly.
stuff like that, ergonomic chairs and
Yeah, yeah. So those are really important things to pay attention to. As business owners, we wear a lot of hats. Insurance is one, but then we also got to manage our employees
yes,
and you got to have
marketing
the
and
employees.
sales and operations and
Yeah,
all that good stuff.
yeah. So that is your risk management questions, I think, is
Yep.
just we have to evaluate that. And we do have some manuals and we have some risk management protocols that we can share. And we are developing more and more so we can share that with all of our clients.
Right. Very nice. Very nice. And I think you had mentioned to me, maybe I'm going to, it's breaking news. Breaking news. This is what mentors do to each other because we're friends. this is why I'm holding you accountable to this. Is you had mentioned to me that you want to start to focus on the coming year on really getting down and dirty with risk assessments for
Yes.
your customers.
Yes.
What does that look like? How is that different than what you're doing now, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's just shedding light. So I want to do is we often are just we're quoting, okay, but at the same time we're not doing risk management. We're not doing those assessments. So actually coming out to the business and assessing and seeing what their day to day and handing them out some brochures and pamphlets so they can kind of think about the chairs or the way they're standing or just like if you're having let's say you're into carpets, you're installing carpets or cabinets. What are the best ways to have that safety protocol of lifting, how to lift, how to go in and actually driving, because if you're driving for the day and you're driving all over, what does that look like? Does that mean I can tell you, I can see all kinds of wrapped cars and trucks on the road weaving in and out because their employee is driving while he's text messaging. And that has a direct impact on your commercial auto insurance. So I think that's what I'm looking for doing next year is just having those conversations because we're just trying to get our jobs done.
Right.
But how can we take a step back and be more proactive and not be reactive in doing those risk assessments and making sure that they know and they're being trained and educated on what that looks like within their business.
Yeah, because the insurance market, I mean, listen, for the 3 to 5 years has been a very reactive industry.
Yes, it is.
Especially here in Southwest Florida with hurricane after hurricane after hurricane, and companies leaving and the claims. It's just been a very at least on the personal side, on the residential side. But it also affects the commercial side too, I would definitely imagine. So all of those things. But no, I'm excited for what you want to bring. I think that's also a great way to set you apart, right? We talk about that on our show of how, and I talk about that with my clients. How can you make yourself different and better? Not better, yes, different and better above your competition. What sets you apart? What's your unique selling proposition?
There's a lot of insurance agents out there. There's a lot of competition in my industry. And you know what? I will match myself with any one of those because the only way to do it is set myself apart. You're right. And I think that is one of them that is overlooked on a daily basis out of most insurance agents offices. And that's what I'm choosing to focus on is educating my clients.
My wheels are spinning right now. I just have to say this because I see this as like a lead gen operation, like a lead gen opportunity for you, right? Especially with your new office and your new market in Nokomis, and or even as like another revenue stream, possibly, right? As a loss leader per se of a revenue stream. Maybe you charge for you to go in and do physical inspections and risk assessments. I don't know. I'm not an insurance agent. But this is where my brain is like, my brain's on fire now, right? So this is what I'm thinking. But I'm super
Oh, we love
excited
you,
for you.
Toby. You always get down and ask the best questions today.
Oh, thank
And
you. Thank
you
you.
know, you just make sure that everybody out there that's, you know, for your business coach, that they have all the information necessary to make sure that they are successful. And I think that that's what sets you apart, is your passion.
Thank you very much. I have a lot of passion for people and have a lot of passion for women in business. And that's my niche, right? Not that I don't have any passion for men in business, I do. And I'll work with anybody, but my niche, right? We talk about in the industry having a niche. My niche is working with female entrepreneurs and business owners, you know, from either let's figure out what you want to do as a side hustle to let's get you over the 5-figure revenue hump into the 6 figures, right? So I just I just love what I do. But and I'm so glad that we're here together. A couple more questions, and we'll be off to the races to enjoy the rest of our day being fabulous superstars. um, so here's a down and dirty question. Can you share any real life examples where business insurance saved a company from significant financial loss?
Yes, actually a restaurant. So the restaurant after Hurricane Ian, they had the same situation happened after Irma.
Oh yeah.
They had a substantial claim after, it wasn't too bad. Spoilage coverage was probably a little bit around $35,000, and that's huge. But then Ian, they not only just had spoilage, but they had blown the roof off of the entire building. And so they could not open for months. They were really devastated. The insurance company actually was telling them they didn't have certain coverages. And we ended up going to bat, and I gave them some terminology and language, and they were able to actually get the entire roof, because they were only wanting to pay them for a very small portion of the roof. The roof was going to cost them about $179,000 to replace, and it had some mold damage and whatnot. So they kept saying that the mold wasn't covered. We were able to generate that for them, tell them where the language it was. We can't obviously go against the company, but I gave them some information and slided it over to her.
Yeah.
She was able to get the entire roof replaced. The entire roof was replaced at $179,000. She was able to get any of the mold damages taken care of, and she got her full spoilage coverage that was paid out for the entire policy limits, when they were only saying that they could give it to her at cost, and they gave it to her at sell value, which is another coverage on that spoilage coverage that you have to, there's different sections of spoilage coverage too.
Right,
So
right.
Anyways, but it was just one of those things of trying to really go to bat and help them, because I believed in the claim that they needed to get more than what they were getting for. We
Wow.
can't get involved in the claims.
Right.
We're not licensed claims adjusters, but
Right.
what we can do is find it in the policy languages and then send it over to that particular insured, so then they can go to bat with the correct information.
Sure. Remember, you said this over here.
Yep.
Wow.
I can't call the company. I can't
No, but that's your value. That's one
but
of
I
the
can
many
give
values
you,
that you bring to your clients.
yeah, I can give you the information.
Wow. Fantastic. All right. So, what are some key considerations when selecting an insurance provider? And I don't know if it's a provider versus an agent. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
provider,
both, but I don't
agent,
know.
broker, we're
Yeah.
all going to term that same advisor. I mean, they're all really the biggest things I think is just making sure that their reputation is good, the range of coverages and companies there's good, their customer service quality is going to be well, their claims handling efficiency is really good. And it not just price. I mean, how well do they answer the phone? Can you feel like you can build a relationship? Because at the end of the day, it is a relationship. You have to be able to relate to one another. Trust is a huge factor. Can you trust that what they're saying to you and what not just saying to you, but that it's true? Because a lot of times, and if they do the ums and ahs and I don't know, I'm going to have to get back to you, and then they don't get back to you for a couple of weeks, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that at the end of the day, it's just that relationship and trust, I think it's a very important aspect. Those two pieces, those two ingredients makes an insurance agent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, that knowing people buy from people they know, like, and trust. I mean, that happens in every industry across the board. Every industry. There's not one industry in the world that that does not hold true for. I
Yeah.
mean, even the cemetery, you got to know them, you got to like them, and you got to trust them. You got to trust to put your family body in the right spot, and that it's your family's body.
That is true.
You
And
got to
that's
trust
I
them,
think,
right?
yeah, I think that's probably the biggest things is just trust and
You got to
relationship. Can you
trust the
relate to them? Can
relationships.
you relate
Yes.
and feel like they are got your best interest?
Yes, yes. Very good, very good. So let's see. One last question. Let me spin the wheel. I have a whole list of questions here. I'm gonna spin my mental wheel of which one would be the best one to ask you last. All right, I have two. How can small business owners leverage insurance to protect their growth and scalability?
Oh, that is a good one. So I think it's just mitigating the risks. So I go back to mitigating those risks. And we just need to ensure that, we're always insuring against the unexpected of the events. We don't know what's going to happen. So we don't want anything to derail to their growth plans.
Mhm.
And we got to make sure they have the right coverage. At the end of the day. And we just got to make sure that we are understanding their operations and any of their new opportunities, because if they're changing, like you said before, if they're going down one path and then they change all of a sudden, I need to make sure that they understand to call me, to let me know what's going on. I don't care how that looks. If it's a phone call, if it's an email, let me know what's happening so I can make sure I can understand their growth and their opportunities that they want.
Right. Very good. All right, last bonus question. What advice would you give to new business owners who is shopping for insurance for the first time?
Yeah. Oh, so when they're shopping it for the first time is you're going to want to make sure that they are researching not only just the agency, but they're wanting to research the company that they've gotten these quotes through. Financial stability is very important right now. There's a lot of companies that are out there transacting business, but they're not in they don't have good financial skills.
Right.
Yeah, they're not financially solvent, some of them. And so you have to be careful of the financial solvency. The claims handling, the downside to that is I had people say, well, after Hurricane Ian, this company, they had a D for claims handling. You have to understand that was a huge catastrophe. It's a category 5.
Right.
What more
Right.
do you expect them?
Right.
And you got to find out what their grading scales are. So based off of claims handling is not always the best way to look at insurance sometimes, because you
Right.
need to understand a lot more than
The
your
mass scale of that.
Yeah.
Is it a mass tragedy, or is it just your own individual claim, with nothing
Exactly.
else going on in the world at the moment?
Exactly. But it goes back to how many companies you need to make sure that they're giving you a couple of different quotes and that they're telling you which companies they went to. I think just having that ability where they're wanting to work with you. They are open and want to work with you. The agent's not acting like a ego that's got, hey, well, this is just the one company we're going to put you through. And I hear that. I hear that from other clients of mine who's called up other agencies, and they were very just, not very helpful. They're like, yeah, okay, well, all right, we'll get back to you. And there wasn't no professionalism at all. And I think that that's important, especially because we're insuring your business. We're
Yeah.
insuring your
livelihood.
livelihood.
Right. It's not like you have a corporate job with a paycheck coming in every week. This is your livelihood. This is listen, you don't have a business, you got nothing. You're gonna have to go back to corporate, right? You're going to have to do something different. And you don't want to take, listen, we have spent years, blood, sweat, tears, energy, money, building the legacy of our business and building our businesses up, to let it just die, be murdered.
Yeah, to not protect
With
it.
one fell swoop of something because you weren't insured properly, it's a crime. It's a crime. I'm telling you, it's a crime. So, listen, this has been amazing. I am so glad you're here with me today. Thank you for coming on the show. How can people reach you if they want to work with you?
Yeah. So we have, like Toby said, we have offices in Punta Gorda and also in Nokomis. However, we write insurance all over the state of Florida. We don't write it just in Southwest Florida. I have clients all over. But they can reach out by emailing me at Alexia, Alexia .Martin, Martin, at whitcoinsurance.com, which is WHITCO, insurance spelled out.com, or best yet, call me. I'm always available, 941-257-0692.
And we'll make sure those are in the show notes. So you'll get all that information. Because if you're like me and you're listening to this lovely podcast, you're driving somewhere. That's where I listen to all my podcasts, even my own. Yes, I do listen to my own.
Yeah, I do too.
Love to
I
hear
listen to
myself
all in the
talk.
car. Or getting ready in the morning when I'm,
Right. That's it. That's it. Awesome. Well, this has been amazing again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Toby, for having me.
You are very welcome. And that's a wrap of another episode of Open for Business, CEO style. I am Toby Ferrel, your certified entrepreneur and business coach. From startup to scaled success, I help women entrepreneurs go grow businesses they love. Have a fantastic day.